basic agenda items, and they are, one is to have me share with you all the progress that I have made around my tech walkthroughs. I've done one tech walkthrough at each location, and then also look to share with you all, and then get feedback from you all, what you thought around what I share, and then also what you've seen that I might not be privy to. And then the third agenda item is for me just to share my general thoughts and ideas around technology integration and what the vision looks like. And then the last step is just to get feedback from you all around that. So how does that sound just as a general agenda?
Sounds great.
Okay, good. So then I'll jump right in and share with you all what I have observed. If any of you have done any of the learning walks, I utilized that protocol, which is I was looking in 3 main areas, and I'll cover what those areas are in just a moment. I was looking in 3 major areas, and then I would make a summary statement based off of what I saw and then provide evidence to support that. I sent these follow-up emails to the principal and DCA at each school when after I was done with the visit, and so I have all of this evidence and my notes that I can make available to any of you if you're interested.
Okay.
So the 3 areas that I won were just basically, is tech being used in any case, right? And this is all the way from a PE teacher using a microphone to project their voice, to a music teacher just playing a CD while kids are filling out a worksheet, all the way up to interactive whiteboards and projectors, which was primarily what I saw in presenting class content, presentations to the students, to watching movies, to hearing aids in classes that allowed students with disabilities to better hear their classmates and their teacher. So that was the first kind of litmus strip that I was looking for, is just, are people using technology? And so here's what I found. At Girls Prep Lower East Side Elementary, out of 16 classrooms that I visited, 8 out of the 16 were using technology. Lower East Side Middle School, 6 out of 11 were using technology. Girls Prep Bronx Elementary was 4 out of 14. Girls Prep Bronx Middle was 9 out of 12 classrooms. Boys Prep was 2 out of 9 classrooms. And then lastly, our preschool, they only have 3 classrooms, so I visited each classroom twice. So that's why the denominator is 6. And actually, every class was utilizing technology on one of my 2 visits to their class. So we had 3 out of 6 classroom visits utilized technology. And like I said, I wasn't very discerning. I was just looking for whether or not technology was being used. And I realized that this is a snapshot because I'm only in a room for, maybe 5 minutes, 8 minutes at most. I'm going to do at least 1 more of these walkthroughs, if not 2 or 3 more. I'd like to get 3 to 4 total walkthroughs of all the campuses just to get a good idea of what's been going on. So the other area that I looked at was around student engagement. And I've talked about, it's kind of a buzzword, right, in our industry. So I've kind of been breaking this down a little bit into what I'm calling active engagement and passive engagement. And then there's just, not being engaged, right? And the reason why I'm calling this out into 2 different areas is because depending on the age of the students, if you walk in, Sean, to a middle school classroom, it can be kind of hard to tell whether the kids are actually, they don't necessarily always physically hold themselves like they're engaged in what's going on. Whereas when you go to the preschool and they're watching a Sesame Street video, all the kids are glued to the screen. So even though the 2 schools could be doing the exact same thing, what appears to be engagement from each can be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to spell that out before I went over the numbers here. And again, these are just my observations off of an initial, so these are by no means kind of finalized. This is just a snapshot. So around the engagement piece, Lower East Side Elementary, 7 out of 16 classes, so that was 7 out of the 8 that were utilizing technology were engaged. In the Lower East Side Middle School, again, because it was a middle school, there were about 2 to 4 classrooms out of 11 that were engaged. There were, again, 6 using technology there. At a Girls Prep Bronx, of the 4 classrooms using technology, really only 1 of them was the classroom actually engaged versus just kind of listening to music or passively absorbing the information. Girls Prep Bronx Middle School, 4 out of the 12 total classrooms visited were engaged, and there were 9 classrooms there that were utilizing. And then at Boys Prep, there were 2 classrooms that were using technology, and both of those classrooms were doing it in a very engaging manner where the kids were engaged. And then again at the preschool, all 3 classroom visits that I witnessed technology being utilized, they were also engaged at that point. But again, I want to call out that, and this is my own learning point from this, is that depending on the age of the student, we really need to make sure I'm being clear about what I'm defining as being engaged, right? Because if a middle schooler is watching a movie, and I wouldn't consider that to be that the student was engaged, just because the preschooler looks engaged, does that mean that we count that as engagement from the student's part? So I'm going to be quiet for a second. I want to hear you guys' reaction to that. I mean, how would you all define engagement with technology?
I mean, I think it's used, and I can only speak to my own classroom, you know, or classrooms that I've maybe observed on my grade team, but the way that we use it in our classroom primarily is we have like agendas, we have PowerPoints every day that are sort of used to keep students on track, to have discussion questions. So in terms of, I guess more of that passive engagement where they're really thinking about what they are working on, I think using technology, I guess it's really just using like a PowerPoint in that way, keeps them engaged because they have not only an auditory reminder of what the discussion question is, but there's also a visual reminder. I'm in one of the ICT classrooms, and that's something that my co-teacher and I try to do all the time. You know, I think it's interesting. I think I would have assumed that more teachers are using technology, at least in some way. But again, it was, you know, I'm trying to think about when you walked into my room. I don't know if I was actually using the board at that time. I was maybe just like in a quick transition, and if that's the case, then I may have not been using the board or using technology in some manner. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what using technology is as defined. I guess you're using it loosely, like any kind of incorporation of even a projector. Because I know when you came into my room, I think I had the projector going, and I think there were Chromebooks or iPads in the middle, but we weren't using them at the time, at that moment for the lesson. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I did use the technology eventually that day in the lesson with the Think Through Math. In terms of engagement, I guess it goes back to the objective. If the technology is really directly facilitating, like the mastery of the objective, or at least the process of mastering the objective, and that students are, I don't know, there's some kind of like motivation involved, and if they feel like that personal desire to kind of get at whatever they're doing with that technology, or getting that special thing they need from the technology, like personalization or support or enrichment or whatever. If those elements are involved, I can see that. I guess engagement can be loose, can mean different things in different situations.
It can. I had a conversation with David around this where he was really challenging me, and rightfully so, to kind of say, well, what is engagement, right? And I think I would start off with technology, and this may seem too simplistic, so please react to it. And Kathy has a comment here that I'll read in just a second. That if kids have their hands on tech, that they're engaged with technology, right? That seems really simple, and I'm not sure if that is maybe not doing its service, because one other way to look at engagement is whether or not students in this particular case, if their wheels are turning, if they're thinking about what's going on, then they're engaged, right? So if you're using or interacting or lay the groundwork first and then be able to kind of step into it, right? Yeah. So one of the thoughts that I had was, especially in elementary school, was whether it's iPads or Chromebooks, and we will continue to discuss this, my philosophy is to have enough that teachers could utilize the tech as a center-based activity. So almost a blended learning center-based. And so we're hovering around at most 10 devices per class. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that because, as you mentioned, that's not enough devices to get everybody. Okay, everybody, grab your Chromebooks. Let's do research. It doesn't work when you only have 10. But unless you're going to buy a device for every single student and store them in a cart in every single classroom, you're never going to be able to get to the point where teachers can just ubiquitously have their entire class online. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that blended center-based learning as a model for technology integration. What do you think?
I do think it's been successful in here when we've done center-based work, but there was setup involved. So for example, earlier in the year, we were doing a lesson arc on the story about a girl from Vietnam. So as a part of it, we wanted them to also research where is Vietnam, what's the Vietnamese culture. So what we did is we set up, we have 3 tables in our classroom, like long tables. So one table was computers, one table was, I think we had a magazine article or sort of a handout article, and then there was another table that was books. So we talked about how they're going to be looking at different sources, and then we timed them and we gave them about 10 minutes at each station, and then they switched. It's very engaging to do that. They all want to get on the computers, of course. But it wasn't, I don't think that is inconceivable. Like, it was very, and Amanda and I think have done that since we started working here. So I do think that's something that teachers could do. However, ahead of time, we knew like exactly what website we were going to put them on. We happened to have lunch right beforehand, so we had everything set up. I think that is what gets tricky and what gets scary for teachers, is when their schedule doesn't allow for them to prep for 10 minutes beforehand and get the computers set up. And then it becomes a little bit overwhelming, unless you really feel comfortable with that yourself, and then you can just get it set up and ready to go. I do like the idea of it being blended and centered. I think, the writing workshop model that we use is very fluid in terms of where students are in terms of the process. So there might be one student who's still drafting and one student who's editing, revising, and one who's ready to publish. So that would work, especially for writing projects. The thing that I would suggest, and I know that you sort of transferred over 3rd grade through up, is now they have their own account. I think something that'd be really helpful if someone could do this, maybe it's you or it's someone else in the tech part of the network, could just create a spreadsheet where it has if your class, student's first and last name, and whatever information that you need to get them logged on. So then all you have to do as a teacher is look at that spreadsheet, quickly have a student write it on an index card, and then have those index cards ready to go all the time. I don't want to go look through eSchool and find their OSIS number or whatever it would need. So in terms of convenience, I think that would be really helpful in setting teachers up and setting students up for using the Chromebooks for like word processing.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
So this is precisely what I'm looking for, this kind of feedback. Sometimes I'm too mired in my own way of thinking, the kind of the tech guy or tech person thinking of like, well, you've got access to the system and the OSIS number's right there.
Yeah.
But sometimes I guess I don't necessarily appreciate the fact that teachers don't want to spend however much of that time it is looking up what those numbers are. So that's very good feedback that I will definitely look to incorporate. And what else I heard you say was that if you agree and think that a blended center-based technology integration plan seems the best, but maybe offering some trainings around what that prep time looks like. And then I'm also trying to institute something that we're calling kind of tech helpers, which I'm sure you probably have this in your class and several other teachers have in theirs, which are a handful of tech savvy students that can do the setup and the breakdown. And I've got a couple phases with that. I'm looking with some of our tech coaches. Nick Zaveri's company is now working with Girls Prep Bronx Elementary, and we have a fantastic tech coach up there named Lauren, who's going to be joining this meeting tomorrow. We're looking at making some videos around how to start up your own tech helpers. So I feel like and please correct me if I synthesize what you're saying incorrectly, but that the blended technology center sounds like a good idea, but the more it's supported, the more success it will more than likely see. Did I say that?
Yeah,
right?
I think that's great. I mean, I think, yeah, and we use the tech helpers. They're great. They know how to put everything away. I mean, to be honest with you, we also had to sort of like maneuver our tech cart in a way to like allow for computers to be like lined up in a systematic way. So we can just maybe like share some of those suggestions, sort of talk to, what was I going to say? Like share out some ideas about, you know, where I mean, it's one thing to really want to be able to like use a website for research and sort of help students with that, but I think it's another thing for setup. But then I think also, I think there should be some differentiation in terms of like professional development with tech, if that makes sense.
It
like
does.
I think
like
some teachers are like, you know, some teachers like just need support in like, how do we use these Chromebooks? Like, how do we get students logged on? And then there are other teachers. I mean, I feel like Amanda and I are in a scenario where like, we really feel comfortable using the Chromebooks and the iPads and everything, but like, what's next? What else can we be doing? So I think that would be really interesting to sort of pursue as a part of this committee.
That sounds like a really good idea. Just so you know, kind of my philosophy around trainings is I really like to make training videos so that people don't have to be confined by time and space. They can view them whenever they want. And I also kind of have a standing rule where no video should be over 5 minutes. And so if there's a 3-step process, where the first step is for beginners and middle steps for, you know, folks that are a little bit more comfortable, and then the third step is for more advanced users. I tend to break those up and make them 3 separate videos. Mm-hmm. So I feel like what's going to come as a natural consequence of this committee are lots of good suggestions like what you're making around making some of these videos so that folks can, or training materials rather, so that folks can interact with whatever level they're at. Mm-hmm. So that all sounds wonderful. So I want to respect your time. You've already gone over 10 minutes, and I want to thank you very much for that. Thank you for being a part of this. And I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting now and make this broadcast available for folks who are watching. If you're watching this beyond the time that we've actually had this live broadcast, then it will be on my YouTube page. And I would love for you to be able to post any comments or questions down below, and those will come immediately to my inbox, and you can join the conversation. So thank you to Leela for being a part of this, and Sean as well, Kathy for lending her thoughts and opinions, and then Kayla for looking to join as well. So thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Bye, Leela.
Bye.
Take care.